Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee joined by Duane Rollins. As always, Duane, it was a quite eventful weekend in Major League Soccer and across the world, the spectrum of soccer. But Atlanta opened a new stadium, and I have to say I was quite impressed yesterday.
Yeah, and that even goes beyond their cheap food and beer, which maybe is why it was so loud, the cheap beer in there. So,
I did not
yeah.
make the link, but it makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah, look, I really liked the sight lines. Look like it's a wonderful place to watch a game at. And, you know, the amount of money they paid, you'd have to imagine it would be. And it is essentially was built with the Falcons in mind, who were coming off a Super Bowl performance last year. It was a performance of some kind at any rate, if you recall that game, but and most do. Great sight lines there. It seems like they're right on top of the field. A very loud building. You know, and the cheap food and beer is a nice little touch that they added to that, which you got to give them credit because, you know, here in Toronto we're getting rewarded for all of our loyalty over the year with like a coupon book with 6 coupons in it for next year rather than cheap food. So there you go.
Probably a ticket price increase, no?
Oh yeah, no ticket price increase, but they gave us 6 coupons, which are like buy a slice of pizza, get one free type coupons. That was our loyalty reward for this year.
You mean the terrible pizza?
Yeah, well, pizza, yeah. Pizza is bad pizza.
It's not that bad, fresh right now, right then and there, like 2 a.m. in the morning when you just come out of some place that served you a little bit of alcohol beverages. It's not that bad, but the rest of the time, yeah, I'll take something else.
The best cheap pizza in the city is 2-for-1 pizza. I will swear by that to my grave. 2-for-1 pizza is the best cheap pizza.
You get 2 for 1.
Exactly. There you go. All righty.
Duane, all right, let's talk about Cal Lauren for a second. We've been talking a lot about him and how the next offseason will be very important in his career. Will he move on to Europe? And we talked about Premier League, but now it seems the championship might be a possible destination for him.
Yeah, Leeds United is the latest team rumored in, and I don't mind that one very much. Like Leeds, first off, is in a promotion battle. They seem to be every year right now, and you know that's.
Crap the bed in the playoffs, but yeah, they always get close to the championship playoffs, at least to make it to the promotion level.
Yeah, they generally finish as top 6 in the playoffs, well, top 2, and then the top 4 after that. Leeds has this habit of finishing 7th, so we'll see what they can do this year. It's such luck. They've been down for a long time now. It's like almost they've been down for so long that there's a lot of people that are listening to this show that are newer fans out there. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging that, but that are newer fans out there that just have no memory of Leeds being in the top flight at all. And if they were to get back, they'd almost be coming back for the first time. But when it gets to Laren, even if they are in the championship, and in many levels, I kind of think the championship is a good fit for Kyle Lauren at this point in his development. He's a big physical player, and that really plays out well at that level. So it would not necessarily be the worst place for him. Would he be doing well at a low-level premiership level, which is what would happen if Leeds were to go up, obviously? That's a different question, and that's a more difficult question to ascertain. But you know, you want to see him tested at the highest level. And that's ultimately been my position on this is you shouldn't undersell how high he can go, but at the same time you want him at the right fit. And I don't mind this rumor of ones that have been out there for a while. I mean, you had the Benfica rumor, which is kind of sexy because it's a big championship, Champions League team that's been around for a while, and you know, you'd kind of like to see him at that level. But at the same time, Benfica has a habit of sort of loaning out anyway. So if he were to go to Leeds, I would imagine he would be going to Leeds with the idea that he would be playing for Leeds. And if he's playing for Leeds, he has every chance to prove himself at either a high championship or a low Premier League level. And that would be good it'd be good. It'd just be good, Kevin.
Well, yeah, and as well, if you take all what's included in a move to England from Orlando for a Canadian kid, there will be a culture shock. There will be an adaptation period. There will be a time where he needs to literally learn how to be far away from everything he has known before and learn how to deal with this. And if he does this in the championship, it sets himself up maybe 2-3 years on a row whenever Leeds make it to the Premier League, if they do, or maybe even this year, after this year, we'll see what the possibilities are him, but that adaptation period would have already have taken place at the championship level, setting himself up for a debut in the Premier League that could be a bit more interesting and maybe more performant than it would be if he just moves to Premier League club.
Fair enough. If I'm going to look at a Premier League level player that he kind of reminds me of, it'd be Wilfried Bonnet. Kind of a big body that's physical, that was able to poach a lot of goals when he was in Swansea. He didn't succeed so much in City's system, and obviously he's still on their books and they're trying to get rid of him. But that's kind of the player that he would remind me of. And as I said, at that sort of more direct kind of lower Premier League level, high championship level where the physicality really is vital, he did excel, Bonnie did. So I would suggest that Lauren, and I've always believed this, that Lauren's athleticism will allow him to be successful in England if he just gets the reps out there. And hopefully he can, because we do want to see him tested at a higher level, and we do want to have him be able to move on. And I think we mentioned Orlando City and sort of the problems they're having there, and obviously Kyle's personal mistake there is high on that. You kind of want him to move away just for that reason, to get out of that situation. And I'm not trying to dismiss what he did and dismiss the punishment aspect of that. He deserves that as well, but nonetheless, for his own personal well-being.
Are you saying the Leeds is a lot less interesting at night than Orlando can be?
I suspect it might be, although Orlando's...
Birmingham, to be quite fair, not Leeds, but Birmingham City.
Yeah, there you go. All right. And the Savage is on Reddit, made a very inappropriate joke about at least he'd be used to driving on the wrong side of the road there. Anyway.
Yeah, that's uncalled for.
There you go. Too soon. Too soon.
Way too soon. And hopefully all our listeners in the Orlando area are doing okay after the passage of Irma. And I have to say, Duane, I don't get it. Why do you put reporters on the beach with like waves and trees falling and swinging around just because for pure enjoyment? Nah, man, I was feeling bad for those guys.
Yeah, well, I think some of them like the rush of it, but there's a Twitter account. It's like Storm Chaser Dave or something out there. Mental. He was gets out of a car to get a wind measurement. He's literally leaning into the wind and it's blowing him around. It's insane. It was 117 miles per hour, and he said it measures lower.
Dude, you can put that measuring thing on a stick. You don't have to get out. Come on.
I think that they get a little something out of that.
You saw the video of the guy walking on like a ledge close to the ocean, like, I'm walking on a boom. Wave hits him. Down he goes. Down goes Fraser.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, look, I get sort of a rush of the thing. I like heights. I'm weird that way. I'll lean over just to freak people out, but I'm never putting myself in true danger. My mother hates it when I do that on their balcony. They live in the 9th floor now. I'll lean over. It's like, she goes nuts. Anyway, all right. Enough of my.
You're just saying this, and I have difficulty just standing still now. So all those videos of stupid people go really high with their GoPros, man, they're freaking me out all the time. But anyways, back to soccer.
Yeah, have you seen the guy that jumps? He jumps on the. Oh, it's not. Like, that guy makes me angry. It's like,
you're gonna when they fall, like when they trip and almost fall, like, oh, I'm back up. Oh, that's nothing. Like, dude, you almost fell 120 stories. You know what that means? It's like game over.
I assume that because they're often just shooting with a GoPro from their head, so you can't see if there's anything on their back. I always assume that they have something on their back, because who else? No one has that much of a death wish, I don't think. At any rate,
anyway, back to soccer.
Yeah.
It's Monday. So just quickly looking at the Premier League, and we haven't talked about it. It's been 4 games played, 4 match day across the board, except for West Ham, and it's a good thing for them. They're playing later today, and against Huddersfield, by the way. A good story so far. But Manchester and City 1-2. It's looking like 2011 all over again.
2012, but yes.
2012. Just a time where both Manchester United and City were very popular and performing.
Yeah, 2012 would be the Aguero goal, but so 2011, 2012. You're right. We're both right. We're both right.
We're saying the same thing, just a year apart.
5-0.
Jeez, literally Jesus.
Yeah, that was a good way to start my weekend. Look, we just could talk about the red card a little bit in that game. I think, and obviously I'm cheering for City, but you can't kick someone in the head. Like, I know it was accidental, but you still can't kick someone in the head.
Please, first, like on the nose and the side of the. Jeez, you could have poked it. Like, you could have destroyed an eye there easily.
Yeah, well, we still don't quite know whether he's going to be okay moving forward, but it's certainly precautionary taken to the hospital. He was waving when he came off the pitch. No, but the English media is notorious. They're kind of the English Premier League media always reminds me of Canadian NHL media in the sense that they're all old school and they don't like the fact that we actually call the rules nowadays. Like in the NHL, they get pissy when some kind of hook gets called or something like that. That's actually in the rule book. It's the same over there. You can kick someone in the damn head, it's a red card everywhere in the world. But anyway.
Oh, but it affected the game. Yeah, but he kicked him in the head. Doesn't matter. It's like, dude, it's not about the aftermath. It's about the actual kick in the head.
Don't kick him in the head. There you go. Yes. Anyway, but besides that, City was all over them before that, and it was really a dominant performance, and it really underlined, I think, Liverpool's fragility at the back. Right? They have such offensive ability. When you take the guy down to 10, it takes Liverpool's strength away, and they can't attack in the way that they like to anymore, and they're just not set up to defend particularly well, and I'm a little bit scared for them in Europe. They can be split apart in the Champions League there. It's good for them that they're back, obviously, but it could get pretty ugly pretty quick if they don't tighten things up quickly there. But good result for City, though, 5-0, obviously. And it's Liverpool's been a bit of a bogey team for them in the last couple of years, too. So to get a result like that, although they've done pretty well at the Etihad, but to get a result that dominating after a season that was a bit sputtery. They were getting the results, but they, it took the last minute to get the result in the game before. They had the draw against Everton. So it wasn't exactly the most inspiring start to the season, but this was a bit of a marker for them, I think.
No, exactly. And what about Leroy Sané? One of my new favorite name in the game because, well, he's in England now, so it's Le King Sané. And that sounds just pretty damn good.
Exactly. It's always a good name. I like the good names. They add something to them.
Le King with the ball. Le King at the corner. Le King scores.
It does, as a French speaker, it must slay you to listen to the English try and pronounce French names, and they really don't have any excuse because they live right beside France.
They've been known each other for 2,000 years. It's not like it's new to each other. It's like, all right, we've been rubbing shoulders for 2,000 years. We should be able to talk about each other a little better.
Figure out how to say the names anyway.
Leroy Sané with goal. Leroy Sané. It's not that complicated, but anyways.
There you go. I want to talk about Eric Palmer-Brown, too. Love the rumors there about him going to City, so this is a segue to that, Kevin. Obviously, the young Kansas City defender, 20 years old, one of the most exciting American prospects out there. This is causing a little bit of pushback within at least the online soccer community out there that are a little frightened, I guess, that he's going to waste away at Manchester City if he does, in fact, sign there. I don't know what to think of this because, first off, whenever an MLS player is linked to MCFC right now, a lot of people's mind immediately go to NYCFC and whether this is some kind of end around. And I'm not sure whether anyone's really sure yet exactly how that would work, whether it would be possible for them to sign a player, take over control, and then loan them back to their affiliate in Major League Soccer. I know that the reaction would basically be, if that were to happen within MLS circles, outside of NYCFC circles. But I don't know, Kevin. Maybe it's my City bias. I don't really find that an issue. If they do something like that, it's I think they're smartly using their resources.
True, and it's the same for everyone. When you find a loophole, you might be the first one to use it. You can get the backlash, but give it time and everybody finds a way to use it, right? That's why a loophole exists. And, well, it doesn't exist. It's there. You discover it. You take advantage of it, and eventually it gets patched, and somebody finds a way to find another loophole, and that's how life works. So why would it be different here?
Yeah, and look, there will... as long as Manchester owns New York, that's not the literal cities because that would be a bit weird. But as long as Manchester City Football Club,
the soccer side, it's quite the opposite in real cities because New York, literally is like
owns the world.
Yeah, exactly. But in the soccer world, no, Manchester City is a lot bigger.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they own it, though, there's always going to be, I guess, a paranoia amongst MLS fans that somehow they're going to use this to our advantage. MLS fans are obsessed with the fairness thing, the whole forced parity stuff, too. I guess this is really where my bias isn't necessarily blue in this case. It's my bias against parity. I would rather see a more open market, and maybe that's my Toronto bias coming out, because if it was a more open market, TFC might be even better, and that's pretty scary. Maybe we should talk about that after a quick break, though.
Yeah, no, exactly. So how about we take that break and come back with a Canadian review?
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee with Duane Rollins. As always, Duane, it's been quite an interesting weekend and a terrible one if you're a Montreal Impact fan. The Montreal Impact lost 1-0 on the road to New England in a game where at some part they did look the better team, had their chances, and Anthony Jackson pulled the Laren, a sitter, wide right.
I know, and we've been talking about him for so much in the last little while that we'd have to, if I was a superstitious man, I might say that we've jinxed him with that. But, Kevin, is that 3 in a row or 4 in a row? Remind me.
3 in a row after 4 wins in a row. Now Montreal, with the victory of Atlanta and the Montreal Impact defeat, finds themselves 7th, yes, 36 points. 3 points behind Atlanta and 3 games more played.
Well, basically all the good that they did in the 4 games in a row have been sort of erased, and they're stuck on 36. They're saying that they did some projected playoff points yesterday, and it's 45 in the West and 47 in the East. So 11 points out of their final. They got 7 games left.
7 games. That's 21 points. 2 of those 7 games is against Toronto FC, so that's 6 points. So they have 6 points that they actually need to get at least 3 out of. The best scenario, it's 3 wins in a row now, coming with Minnesota, Atlanta, and Toronto. You get those 3 games, you get 9 points. You find yourself with 4 games to go and the necessity of maybe 1 or barely 2 results. Outside of that, you're looking at a almost insurmountable task.
Yeah, well, and the problem, too, as we talked the other day, is Atlanta has all those games in hand, and they started them off well with the 3-0 win yesterday in the new stadium.
And that's
now,
remember when I was talking about how maybe the new stadium will bring some negative aspect. It will take away some markers and some familiarity that the players have made with the university stadium. But no, the atmosphere, the crowd on top of the field, the crowd literally giving energy to the players. We've seen this in that game, how Atlanta is so hungry with the ball, especially with that new stadium now. It's all seems to be very fitting. It's going to be difficult to beat Atlanta at home, and they got a very home schedule until the end of the season.
Yeah, the only problem with and it's more about how quickly they have to play the games, and that's more what's going to wear them down, because it is turf, and rush of the first game might be a bit propelling them a bit forward too. But look, I don't think anyone wants to play Atlanta in the playoffs, though. To take this from a TFC perspective, right now the way it stands with them sitting in the last knockout spot, if they were to win that game against Chicago, and I would actually put them as an equal favorite in that game. That would set up a TFC Atlanta second round matchup, and that might be, in many ways, when I look at this, the worst possible matchup for TFC in the first round, or the second round in this case. But we should go back to Montreal again, though, before we continue on forward. Look, from your perspective, is there anything you can pinpoint, or is it just one of those things right now where they teased you with some good play and now they've gone back to their level? What are your thoughts on this slump that has followed the streak?
Those 4 wins in a row were games where everything went right for Montreal, and when they had the chance, they scored those goals. It's that easy. It's the goal scoring aspect. Piatti was on fire. Piatti was negotiating, and there was that aspect, and we haven't heard anything in the last few weeks, right? But back then, those 4 wins, that exactly when it became public, and everybody was playing out of their mind, and it was the return after the Gold Cup break, and it was everybody rejuvenated and maybe 100% after those 4 games. If you're looking at the 3 defeat now, 3-1 against Toronto. Toronto was clearly the better team on that day, on that Sunday, in Montreal. Nothing I can say. Toronto, sometimes you just get beat by a better team, and that's what happened on that day. Now take the other 2 matches. 2 1-0 defeats. Once at home against Chicago, and a red card in a weird situation, and that goal, Bastion. And if you go back to The Saturday 1-0 defeat in New England in a game where the goal came out of a weird play where the ball bounced everywhere. You did take control of that game in other parts, and you had chances. You just weren't able to finish. Those two games could have been a lot different. So we're talking about the one defeat and two games where things didn't go your way, but you didn't find a way to win. And that makes a difference in the late stage of the MLS type of season. Is you need to be able to find ways to get things done. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be because of the build-up play or whatever. Just goals and results.
Goals win games.
Exactly.
Goals win games.
And
yeah.
that hasn't happened.
Look, and that's, yeah, when a team is rolling, they tend to get it's not so much about the first goal, it's about that second goal and third goal even in a game that really separates, I think, the top teams, because they eliminate that like luck factor, that bounce that goes off a defender's head for an own goal, that missed sitter. They get that out of the way if they get multiple goals. And you know, it goes without saying that if you look at teams that score 2 or more goals in a game, they're probably, the record is, you know, very favorable. 2 points a game or 2 points per game.
Jeez, it's that easy. Yeah. TFC's averaged close to 2 goals a game. Not quite, but very close. And that almost guarantees you at least a shot at a win, if not a draw, every single time out. And Montreal did that in their 4-game win streak. They were not able to recreate that now, and now is the time to do so. It's not panic. Well, it is panic button time, but it's not like white flag waving time yet. I think the next result will tell a lot. Unfortunately, it's Minnesota at home. If you get a win there, then you got maybe one more game of margin of error. I was talking about this weekend. Montreal has 2 games of margin of error, and they have to either win 5, draw 3, win 2. Like a possibility, probably get 7 points in those 5 games remaining. So they got 2 margin of error games. You got 2 games against Toronto. At least get one of those games will be a loss, in my opinion, which leaves one possibility of a result against TFC late in October at Montreal, at Saputo. So you still find yourself with 1 game that you can afford to lose, and it might be when you travel down to Atlanta. So you're looking at a very, very fine line between being the conversation to make the playoff, Duane, or literally being eliminated outright in the next few weeks.
Are you chasing New York, I think? I would have to say that. I think Atlanta, with the games in hand that you have, I mean, they could collapse for sure, but I think the Impact are chasing the Red Bulls realistically for that 6th spot. It's a tough slug from here for sure, because once you hit the 6th spot, I get you have the lottery ticket, but having that, you know, short rest, short week, have to win on the road, immediately turn it around game. Both TFC and Montreal fans are familiar with how tough that can be. Both of them had pretty lopsided losses in that game. Montreal against Houston all those years ago, and of course Toronto famously against Montreal 3 years ago. So it's a tough slug, but you know, you'd still rather have the lottery ticket, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, no, exactly. So we'll see what happens for Montreal if they can get in the playoff. And it's not just getting in, you have to perform in it too as well. But speaking of being in the playoff, TFC, the first team in the entire Major League Soccer that has officially punched their ticket for the 2017 Fall Dance.
It's not your big brother's TFC anymore. No, they the terrible football club, KFC, however you want to refer to them. There's been many derivative nicknames over the years. They are no longer really performing that way. Yeah, the 90. If you go to the it's like 38.com or whatever, the stats site that gives the percentages out there, TFC's percentage to clinch a first round playoff bye is 99% right now. They are obviously clinched into the playoffs, and they have a more than 99% chance of winning the Shield. Magic number to clinch the Shield is 10. That really is the focus at this point. They're projected to finish with 70 points. That would be a record as well. Lots going right. Only 3 losses in the season. That's the one I always come back to again and again and again. Whenever I look at the standings, I mean, the points are impressive, obviously. I look at that 3 losses in the column in September in Major League Soccer, and I go, that's a Premier League number, man. You don't see that in MLS when teams have only lost that few times. And their goal differential is getting a little crazy, too, with a 4-0 win again.
You know what? If Toronto can keep the same team in the offseason heading into next year in the Champions League, right? It's what I've been hearing lately, like from prominent journalists like Charles Boehm, very friend of the show. You can hear him quite often on the show, once every few weeks. He was talking about how, in his eyes, maybe this TFC team could be one of the first ones to actually compete and be dominant in the Champions League.
Look, we'd be lying if
Champions League, just to be fair, but still.
Yeah, well, Montreal made the final, so I think they competed in it. But
yes, but that final, there was never a chance in where that they would win it. We were there. We saw the second half once they actually turned it on. How okay, nobody can beat them.
Yeah, look, I'd be lying if I didn't say my mind has not drifted that way first. There is one major thing that they need to do first. This TFC crowd, and look, regardless of whether they win the MLS Cup. They will be in the Champions League, and they will be an interesting story in the Champions League, and they will get, scarily enough, if you're looking at next year's season, TFC will get extra allocation money for being in the Champions League, which means that they will be able to add another piece. I don't know where you'd even add it, to be honest. Maybe some depth in the. I don't even know. This team is really kind of doesn't have a lot of weaknesses right now that you can point to. I think maybe you add another scoring option off the bench. I don't even know. But regardless, Cooper. You'd probably replace Cooper. That's what you do. There you go. I've solved their offseason problems. You get a little more. Because Cooper hasn't really appeared much this year. And, you find someone that's as creative and that can do the sort of stuff that Cooper does well and combine that with someone who doesn't have brain farts in the way that he does, and you're set for the Champions League. But, yeah, look. That's where we're at with TFC, though. We're speculating about next year because they are going to win the Shield. I mean, it would take not only a collapse by TFC, we're also at the point now where you'd have to have a freakishly good run-in by New York. I think maybe Chicago might have an outside chance, too, if they were to go perfect the way out and TFC were to drop. But even if they go perfect the way out, TFC still has to drop 3 games. And
no, you're right. And in the West, it's not even close. I just dropped down my browser to see the Western Conference standings. There's 50 points difference between Portland and Toronto. This is not happening. We're talking about a difference of 2.11 points per game for Toronto and 1.52 for Portland. It's not even comparable. In the East, Portland is just a mid-table team.
Yeah, and that's
points-wise, of course.
I was saying this. The other speculation we're having around here now is, and this is not meant to be arrogant. They can lose in the Eastern playoffs. I think. The chance it's going to be tough for any Eastern team to beat them in a 2-game series. It really will be, and that's just being honest and being observational. But it's possible. You get Javinko goes down, a little bit of bad luck. Who knows? It can happen. You get behind it. I think the way it happens is that you get Javinko go down, you have bad luck on the away leg, and that they're able to bunker down and prevent them from scoring multiple goals in Toronto in the second leg. That's how they lose in the playoffs. But realistically, you have to project them to be the heavy favorite to make the MLS Cup final. Once they make the MLS Cup final, all bets are off because it's a single game. We saw what happened last year. I don't know who they'd want to or least want to play there. Maybe from in some ways they'd least want to play Vancouver just because if they were to lose that would be particularly painful. That's from a fan perspective. I think from my perspective, from a logical perspective, the team TFC would least want to play in the final is Sporting Kansas City because they're so defensively sound and they could replicate what Seattle did last year. But they're the favorite, and there's no denying that. But anyway, it was quite the result on the weekend. There's not much to break down about it. It was just one of those performances again, like I talked about against Philadelphia, where it's in the stands, it's you're having a laugh. It's okay, this is just going to pass the ball around and score goals at will. What the hell are we watching?
Yeah.
We're this team.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. And you know what I like, though? And it's not necessarily related, but during the U.S. men's national team, I don't know, it was during the Seattle versus L.A. game last night. Alexi Lawless was on the show a few weeks ago, was talking about the U.S. men's national team, and he did quite the rant, and I have to say, I don't have it queued up. Maybe we can play it tomorrow. But if you watched it, it was quite interesting, and it tells Josie, is this good enough? You're doing great club level. How about you do it for your country? Little things like that. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, the difference between Josie and the USMNT versus TFC is that Javinko, Gio-Vinco is not part of that team. It's with the joke, why can't Kyle Lawrence score for Canada because Kukaw's not Canadian? Although not so much this year, but nonetheless.
Well, exactly. All right, let's just finish quickly with Vancouver. Vancouver 3-2 against Real Salt Lake at home. Vancouver now could be a sleeper for the playoff getting hot at the right time, and slowly but surely racking up results and climbing that standing.
And look, RSL has really turned it on in the second half of the season. They're a young team and they're very interesting for next year. So we give them a lot of credit. So this is to say that Vancouver's result is impressive to get a 3-2 result against RSL down there and to keep themselves right in the mix. The projected playoff cutoff point for the Whitecaps for the West, I should say, is 45, and they're sitting at 41 right now. So you'd have to think that they're pretty safe to get in.
And 1 game in hand, actually no, 3 games in hand versus Portland. Vancouver could finish the season top of the West, Wayne, because in the points per game right now, the one metric that would maybe give us a clear ranking of the teams right now, they're 1.58, which would put them first in the Western Conference.
Yeah, look, and sets up Don Garber's nightmare MLS Cup final possibility.
TFC Vancouver at BMO Field, because, yeah.
Oh my!
I'll be there if that happens. You know it.
Is it possible to get a negative ranking, like on ESPN? Is it? Or I think it's on Fox this year. But at any rate, is it possible to get a negative? I don't know. That's funny to think about.
I would love that Vancouver-Toronto final.
Yeah, well, as a Montrealer, that would be a bit of a dilemma for you. But
kind of. But at least the party won't be too far. Only 6 hours away, so. I can get there quite easily.
I think there's a pretty good chance that the MLS Cup final is going to be 6 hours from you, and that's just I've watched this team up close and personal for most of the year now, and it doesn't seem likely that they're going to lose the Eastern playoffs.
I could say that I was at back-to-back MLS Cup. Unfortunately, it's not with the Impact. Unfortunately, but I was at the Eastern Conference final. That was something last year.
That was something, and look,
to this day, the best 2 games I've ever been at.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll finish this week. I do have to run today, so we have to keep it tight. But I answered the question there, and let's just assume that TFC makes the final here for second. And I know that might be hard for you to swallow there in Montreal. But who do you think? Who would you want Toronto to play so that they could provide the most chance for denying your English cousins down the road?
For pure observer perspective, I'll choose Vancouver. I want to see that happen. Just a pure Canadian soccer fan. It's like, yeah, it's unfortunate that it would not be the Impact. But outside of the Impact, the teams that gives me the most content is Vancouver and Toronto. So in a podcaster level, I would probably want that Vancouver versus Toronto. Dwayne, imagine the amount of podcasts we'll be asked to be on if that's the case. It's like, we'll be like West this week. We'll be like West last week, like everywhere.
Yep, we'd be talking all over the country for sure.
We'd be famous.
I don't know about that, but nonetheless, it'd be fun to do there. Hopefully, the weather's a little bit better this year. It really was cold last year. I got to admit that.
My toes still haven't recovered fully. Like I still can't feel my back. I'm exaggerating, but yeah, it was that cold.
If you're listening from outside of Toronto, it was unseasonably cold. It usually is not that cold that early in December, but it was. It can be that cold that early in September. So maybe this year we'll get a mild one. Although if we're playing Vancouver, you'd want it to be freezing because it's never cold there. So there you go. Which they like to remind us, and they have pretty mountains apparently. Something about the mountains are pretty. They built them with their hands,
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine that.
All right.
You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. with another edition of Soccer Today. And until then, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.